you, CWE, for this opportunity. I have interacted with CWE in the past when I was heading the Jobs for Her Foundation, and I do know a few of your members. I know Gayatri for sure. I'm glad that she's come over here to enjoy a coffee over this virtual platform. We have enjoyed physical coffee chats in the past, but yeah, this is life, right? So I thought, let me, narrate a small story to start the session, which I'm sure is going to be extremely familiar to all of you. So the minute the lockdown started, right, what happened? Of course, all of us had to start working from home. But the other thing that happened was all the help that we had in terms of the maids and the cooks and maybe the gardeners and whoever else you had, maybe even the driver, but I think that really didn't pinch us much because we didn't have to drive out. But the rest of the help that we would always have around us stopped coming. Maybe, for those of you who had, live-ins, it was still okay, but for the majority of us, it was a challenge. Same was with me. Day one, how did I react to it? I realized that, the responsibility is on me to ensure that the cooking happens, the cleaning happens, and, I took it on. Just went and, asked my daughter because her vacations had just started, whether she'd help me with the swabbing, but I took care of, the sweeping and cooking and, the bathrooms and the dusting and things like that. Day one is okay. Went ahead with the same enthu on day two also. And I looked around to see, what was happening around the house. Nobody really cared, because I'd asked my daughter, she would come at the right time, she would help me, and then she would go back to her room. The rest of so I live in a joint family, my mother-in-law, my mother, my husband, my daughter, and I, 5 of us in the house. Okay, day 3, day 4, routine continues. And I'm getting a little tired because I'm not used to these chores. The worst of it is the cooking, right? I hate cooking. I'm sorry, but I don't like to cook. So it was weighing on me, but yeah, I kept going. I kept looking around to say, will somebody, put up a hand? Will somebody ask me, do you need any help? Do you want me to do something? Because somebody has a conversation to say, oh, look at her, she's doing so much, Well, nothing happened. Day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It continued like that. And on the 10th day, after the day was over, in the night, the last chore of the night, day is to drop off the dust, take all the stuff from the dustbin and put it outside the gate and come back. I decided to talk to my husband. So I sat down and said, do you even realize what's happening? And people don't realize in my house, and that's because my husband has all through his life worked from home. So nothing changed for him, right? The first thing that attacks all of us is the work from home. For him, nothing changed because he has always worked from home. My daughter, her college had just finished, so it was anyways going to be vacation period, so she would be at home most of the time. Mother-in-law is always at home. Mother is always at home. And nothing changed for them because they were getting their, breakfast and coffee at the right time, and the house was spick and span, the bathroom's clean, and, there's no dust around. Nothing ever changed for them. The only person for whom things changed was me. And why so? Why so? Because I decided that it is me who's going to run the show. And I assumed that somebody will put their hand up. Somebody will empathize. Somebody will come and say, or maybe even say that, hey, Nirja, I don't think we need to clean the house every day. Maybe, once in 2 days, let us, kind of, that's good enough. Nobody said a thing. Life was normal for them, as usual. So I sat down, I spoke to my husband and I said, do you even realize that things have changed? Things have changed for me. There's no Manjula at home. There's no Uma at home. It is me who's become Manjula, Uma, and everybody else. And this is not going to happen. This is not going to continue because we knew the lockdown was going to be forever. And even if the lockdown was lifted, I was not thinking of calling my cook and maid back for some time. That I had kind of decided. So I said, I need help. I can't continue like this. And you can decide to pick which chore you want. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to control that. There's a variety that you can choose from any of it, whichever you prefer. But you will have to, do something. Otherwise, if you think that you can't do, I will drop some things from tomorrow. And my favorite thing which I will drop is probably cooking. So then you may not have your breakfast and coffee in the morning. Well, it didn't go down well for sure. But I could afford to have this conversation because, yeah, I have a 25-year-old marriage. So maybe I could afford to have such a conversation. But it didn't go well still. He said a lot of things. He said, no, what? Yeah, what are you expecting me to do? Blah, 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 blah. And then, we went off to sleep. Next morning, Well, I was very tempted not to make the coffee, but I went ahead. I made the coffee, I made the breakfast, made the lunch, and we got on with the sweeping and swabbing and all of that. And my daughter's job, right? So she went into the study where my husband was working to kind of clean and mop the floor. And my husband said, tomorrow is Saturday, Sneha. I will, mop. So I just came in and I said, because I also know that my husband has a back problem. I said, no, don't choose this because I don't want to be ending up with another liability, a patient at home to be cared for because of the mopping. Maybe you can look at the vessels, it's not that strenuous. And well, that was the conversation. Evening, I did see my husband around the sink cleaning up some vessels. Next morning, I saw my mother-in-law near the sink. And then I saw that there was a conversation by the side where my mother-in-law is really conscious of the fact that our son is, cleaning the vessels and asking, why are you doing it? And he's saying that, no, I think we should help out. And from the third day onwards, there was a competition between my mother-in-law and my husband. Because my husband doesn't want my mother-in-law to clean. My mother-in-law doesn't want my husband to clean. So both of them are competing to clean the vessels. So that chore just went away from me. I didn't even have to look at the sink. It was perfectly always clean. And then, we kind of figured out, we decided that we will not sweep every day. We will probably do once in 2 days. And all we got into a routine. So the point that I was trying to make here with this story, which is very, very familiar to many of us, I think, is why is it that I took 10 days to sit down and have such a conversation? There was an assumption that people will come and help out. There was also a guilt which said that, Neerja, you are supposed to drive all of this. Okay, you are responsible for all of this, whatever happens in the house. And with the assumption and the guilt is what I struggled for the 10 days. And then I realized that it's not going to work and, we need to have a conversation. And of course, each of us is a different way to have the conversation. For me, I always strategize. I think my strategy of, just, pointing him to the vessels and kind of helped, and my mother-in-law and him kind of, took it over completely. So, there's also a strategy piece that comes in because usually, directing the conversation doesn't help. You have to do it times. So I thought, let us start today's discussion around, there are multiple stories that we can talk about when it comes to women in leadership and challenges and, how we struggle. But I thought this is something which probably all of us will relate with. It's been quite recent. And let's open the discussion this way. And I would want to understand from Vivek how his life was, with the lockdown and anything that he wants to kind of tell me in terms of how I behaved. Was it okay, not okay?
Thanks, Neerja. I don't think you could have asked for any better behavior, Neerja, if you asked me. The fact that you had two people competing to wash vessels, that means you absolutely did something right. So thanks, CWE, and always a delight to be in such a forum. I also realized till Vinod just joined that I was the only male member in this panel. So it's something which is also interesting because a lot of things that we speak about is not about gender, but about the inner archetype. And I'll speak a little bit more about it as the conversation goes on. Just a couple of thoughts. I thought I'll just start with giving a little bit of a background of what Quinergy does. And so a lot of things that I'm going to talk about, you'll probably make some sense and you'll be able to see some connection. Quinergy Leadership Academy fundamentally is an organization which works with organizations and individuals in developing yourself. So we help organizations and individuals be the best that they can be. And this is done through a lot of inner drama that happens internally, right? I mean, there are various things that come in the way of us being the best that we can be. So what we do is we work with people in helping them unleash their inner energy. And we believe that all of us have tremendous potential. And that's fundamentally what we do. But the unique thing about the way we approach it is that all our lessons are learned from Indic wisdom. When I say Indic wisdom, all of the philosophies and all of the methodologies and the frameworks we use have all come from either the Yoga Sutras or the Mahabharata. And that's the beauty of what we do. And we believe there are immense stories, immense examples, immense reflections, immense case studies which are possible from Indic wisdom, and for whatever reason we've not been utilizing it fully. So that's the fundamental, philosophy based on which we operate. So while I reflect with Neerja on what she said, I will be using examples from the Mahabharata to reinforce the point that I'm trying to make. So basically, what I thought I'll do is I'll leave you with three possible exploration, so to speak, right? And then we can open it up, and Neeraja can reflect, and the rest of the participants can also add, or if you have any questions on. The first thing is that if you listen to what Neeraja was saying, a little deeper, a lot of things she actually told us was what she was thinking through inside. She was asking herself, what's happening to me? I'm struggling with a couple of things. This is not the way. I need to ask for help. I need to see how can people support me in this. Things are not going to be the same. The context has changed. Context has changed for me, but for a lot of other people, it does not seem to have got impacted, right? So this entire thing that Neeraja was talking about is what we like to call the inner drama. And I'd like to leave one opportunity for all of you all to reflect as well is while the responses outside may be multiple, the context outside may be multiple, oftentimes the way we're dealing with this is in terms of how are we able to handle the inner drama internally. And that's one of the first propositions I want to leave with you. So how effectively we deal with this inner drama is actually going to tell us whether we can enliven the context or not. The fact that Neeraja was able to dig deep within and say, the only way I can deal with this is to actually have a conversation with my husband, with my daughter, with my mother-in-law. And therefore, then you look at the end result is the entire context got enlightened. As a family, they got together, everybody takes responsibilities. And as a whole, the entire family was better off than before. And that's one of the unique things that I want you to believe. So that's the first proposition I want to leave with this group as we keep reflecting. The second proposition is that a lot of us tend to have a very, lack of a better word, a Western model of what heroism means. All of us tend to put certain pressures on ourselves saying, I have to be this, I need to be this is the way I need to be, kind of a thing. What I want to leave with all of you, and if you look at the very typical Western models of heroism, though it's an example from a male kind of a context, a male gender kind of a context, all of us must have seen Hercules, Atlas carrying this big, huge stone in front of them. It's all about somebody who's macho. The world is seen as antagonistic. The whole world is against us. So you need to go and fight a war, fight a battle to win this kind of a thing. So that's a very Western concept of what heroism is. What I like our participants to think about is, in our way, in our scheme of things, the way we define heroism is, can you enliven the context that you're operating in? Heroism can take multiple forms. The world does not have to be antagonistic. Everybody does not have to be against you. But if you can just act in a way in which everybody within that context actually gains from it, and the context actually gets enlivened, that for us is the way we look at heroism. Now, if all of us can reflect and take a minute and saying, if I look at this as a way of heroism, what am I doing in my own context to help them develop? And what Neeraja did is exactly that. She exhibited a certain kind of heroism in that particular context. Like I said, I need to go back to the Mahabharata. So I'd like you to, I'd like to offer the models of heroism that exist. Right. And so in the Mahabharata, there are 5 kinds of heroism that we have picked up, and what we like to call archetypal energies. When I say archetypal energies, what archetypal energies mean are they're very typical of a certain kind of a person. They're different from stereotypes, where stereotypes are very something which is man-made, which is based on prior experiences, things like archetype is the core of what that is. Right? So the first archetypal energy I want to leave with you is that of the Yudhishthira. Right. So just one caveat here, even though I may use names as Yudhishthira, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva, they're not gender governed. Even though they're male gender as names, they're not gender governed. I'm defining archetypal energy. So it could be a male or a female who are actually exhibiting the Yudhishthira kind of a propensity. So the first one, the archetypal energy I want to offer is that of the Yudhishthira. Right. What the Yudhishthira archetypal energy denotes, right, is Yudhishthira tends to look at everything as black and white. Everything is about a rule book. Everything is about a precedent. Is this the way it was always done? So I have a certain role. This is the way the role needs to be played. These are the rules and regulations. This is how it's always done. Right? So all of us have all of these archetypal energies, and some of them become more dominant than the others. Right? So somebody, and all of us, like I said, this is not about a gender, but all of us carry a certain kind of archetypal energy. So somebody who has a Yudhishthira kind of archetypal energy will look at the context and say, what are the rules and regulations? This is the way it's supposed to be. Over the years, this is how it always has been, right? And that's typically what their response will be to some of this. A lot of us may have a Bhima kind of an archetypal energy, right? Bhima is all about passion. Yudhishthira is all about structure and systems. Bhima is all about passion. It's all about coming into a context and say what needs to be done, right? What is the task that needs to be completed? It's not so much about the rules and regulations. Let's get into it and let's accomplish what we've set out to do. There's a lot of passion. There's a bit of warrior energy in a Bhima, right? And so the Bhima asks a question saying, who are the people who are with me? Let's all work together. Let's get cracking. There's a task that needs to be done. Let's go ahead and get it done. That's the typical Bhima kind of a heroic potential, like I said. The third is this whole idea of the Nakula. Nakula is somebody who oftentimes is all about service. So Nakula works and says, are people happy within the system? So in a family, is everybody happy? Are people unhappy? What is coming in the way? How do I value people within this, right? Are there conflicts in people? How do I resolve conflicts, right? So that's the kind of energy that Nakula brings in. Sahadeva is all about coming into this context and then looking at this and saying, what is the knowledge? Sahadeva is all about knowledge and saying that what are the things which are working? Are there some things that we need to do better? What are the steps that we have forgotten? Is something like that is what a Nakula is Sahadeva brings. Now, like I said, these are all four archetypal energies. All of us have in some form or the other, some archetypal energy or the other. In fact, you can go to our website, Quinnergy.com, and you'll find a quick quiz, which you can take anytime you're free after this call or sometime later, which will give you what kind of typical archetypal energy that you belong to. And it'll give you some insight as to what these archetypal energies mean. So this is my third proposition, so to speak, saying all of us have a certain kind of heroic potential. Every heroic potential is great. Also, every heroic potential has its own challenges. They have its own shadow sides. One of the unique heroic potential is what I want to offer as my fourth one, right? Is the archetypal energy of the Arjuna. What the Arjuna archetypal energy is able to do is actually take a step back from what's happening in the context. Take a step back, look at the system as a whole, look at all the things that are happening there, look at what's happening. Are the people happy? Is this context very clear? Rules and regulations clear? Is there passion within the system, right? And then able to look at the big picture, ask very fundamental questions about this, and then enter the context in a way in which it can become, more lively. So I can enter as a Yudhishthira, I can enter as a Bhima, I can enter as a Nakula or a Sahadeva. So I can enter the context in any archetypal energy. But as an Arjuna, the starting point is take a step back and say, I don't know what's happening. Can I look at this particular context, look at the ways in which I can enlighten, and then I enter this particular context. Right? That's the fifth one. Now, the beauty of the Arjuna energy, right, the archetypal energy, and like I said beginning, that all of us have these archetypal energy. There are ways and means in which you can be in touch with the Arjuna within you. There are ways and means in which you can awaken the Arjuna within you, right? And you can do that by following a certain process, using a lot of mind and body, exercises. You can start looking at things like meditation, yoga. It's also a reflective process. What this tells you is you're able to look at yourself in a slightly more distant way. You look at what's happening within you. You're able to look at the context operating from that Arjuna location. And then you're able to enter in a way in which the entire context becomes extremely powerful. Right? So I wanted to leave these 3-4 thoughts with you, right? And the beauty of all the work that Neeraja and me do is basically we have a dialogue, right? So we have a conversation, and we don't claim to know all the answers because what we're talking about is experiential. So we'll have this conversation, and quite happy for anybody else to have any questions, comments, and then ask us, and then we can take it from there. Over to you, Neeraja.
Yeah. So You know, as you were talking, I was reflecting, like the earlier session we did for somebody else, we were talking about another context, which was the imposter syndrome. And what very heavily came out was that I'm a strong Yudhishthira, right? It's always a black and white. I can't, you know, deal with gray. I can't take risks. I have to play by the book. And in the conversation that we had today, or in the incident that I narrated today, I'm seeing a sense of Nakula there, where initially I thought, okay, I have to care, and, you know, I have to take on the mantle and let me, you know, look after everybody. And then probably, you know, I moved, you know, I kind of, as you said, maybe stepped back. And the thing is, I did it like in the moment. It wasn't a planned thing. I think I just lost it that night, and I said, okay, now time for a conversation, right? So it could happen that way, or it could, you know, happen with the deep thought to sit down and, you know, really step back and reflect. And the reflection could be, what particular archetypal energy am I displaying in that situation? And is it giving me the right results, the desired results that I want, or the desired results for the entire ecosystem? And in this case, with this example, was the house. Probably it could be an organization, a team, or wherever else. And hence, kind of move from that archetypal energy to another to get the desired result that we want as the individual or for the organization. So that's what I'm seeing here. So do you see that I move from Nakula to, you know, another archetypal energy in this particular situation, Vivek?
So it's possible, Neerja, that you're moving between that. And, you know, one of the things is with the Nakula, right? And it's something that all of us, whenever we're in touch with Nakula energies, realize is that we tend to come last. And, you know, if some of you go through the Nakula, you know, even if you do the assessment on the site, online and all of that, or even if you're able to think, when I describe the Nakula person as somebody who often looks at everybody else, makes sure everybody's happy, looks at all the context, and then takes a step back. One of the things we realize about people who tend to display a dominant Nakula is that they tend to put themselves last, right? So this whole sacrificial element and things like that. So what actually happened during Neeraja's journey was that she was still playing the Nakula kind of a role, saying, I will hold this thing together, I will hold the scheme together, make sure that everybody's taken care of, my husband gets his coffee on time, his breakfast on time, and everything else. But somewhere, as you keep working with that and you start reflecting, you realize that you actually are suffering in some form or the other. And therefore, it's coming at a certain cost. You also begin to be in touch with the fact that that I cannot continue like this. And as I continue in the future, I am going to burn out, and it's going to come at a certain cost. And then is when you tend to ask for help. So one of the things that Nakula energies do is that it push themselves to the corner, then eventually then only ask for help. Right? So it's a classic Nakula kind of a thing, Nakula Yudhishthira kind of a thing actually playing out. Right. So there's this whole role boundedness of saying this is what the role is about. Also, there's a bit of a Nakula saying I need to put myself last kind of a thing. So it's a classic case of both of those.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I do see that Maina has written something here. A lot of the Yudhishthira is from conditioning and governed by the whole society. So how does one deal with that? So let me kind of, just answer that, and then Vivek, you could probably, tell us more about it. So yeah, that's also, what we call as the stereotypes, right? There is a stereotype associated, and there's a big stereotype associated with the gender, and saying that, okay, as a woman, this is what you're supposed to do, and that's how she's supposed to behave, and as a man, this is how it is. And these are these stereotypes which kind of make the inner drama worse. And the stereotypes come from three aspects. One is the internal, because we have been conditioned, we have observed certain things, and we believe that's how it has to be. So that's the internal, and I think that's the biggest fight for us. Then there is, of course, from the immediate family and friends, which we kind of don't want to rub them off in the wrong, and hence we kind of toe the line. And then there is, of course, the larger ecosystem, which could be the organization and the rest of the world around us, which kind of dictates a particular stereotype. So again, what Vivek was also explaining is that the minute you start looking at it from an archetype and not from a stereotype, to sit down and say, okay, which is the archetypal, form, propensity, whatever you call it, am I exhibiting here, without really caring about what the rest of the world believes you must do or behave in this particular situation. And then you decide what is the right outcome that I want out of it. And the outcome is yours. See, in my case, I wanted help. Maybe there is somebody else who doesn't want help, and a third person may want to deal with it in a different manner, and the person will have to move a different archetypal energy. So instead of continuously looking at this is the stereotype and this is how the world is, and hence I must toe the line, and let's otherwise what will the rest of the world think of us? If we are able to sit down and reflect on what is the archetypal energy that I have, the dominant one in me, because of which I am progressing in this fashion, and it's not really helping me, it's not giving me peace, and it's not getting me the desired outcome, then you could possibly evaluate before acting. You could possibly evaluate in your mind, how do I kind of bring in another archetypal energy and see how it will play out? Maybe you could visualize it and then go about acting in that manner. Vivek, anything you want to add?
If I can just build on what you said, Neelja, and while we talk about archetypal energies, I spoke very briefly about the Nakula archetypal energy, right? So the certain things that Nakulas tend to do very well, and when I say Nakula archetypal energies do tend to very well, is making sure that people are happy within the system, there's no conflict. We call it the shadow side, and one of the shadow sides of the Nakula is they lose touch with what their own needs are. So they tend to, neglect their own needs, and therefore it leaves with a lot of, fragmentation, right? They tend to live on two worlds, one world within themselves where they tend to suffer silently, and another world there actually everybody thinks and they're making everybody else happy. An equivalent of a shadow side for a Yudhishthira kind of an energy is the fact that you're right, they may become a dominant Yudhishthira because of social conditioning, because they oftentimes at times, typically with male archetypal energies, they oftentimes the head of the family. So there's certain amount of responsibility, even though it's not imposed on them, there is certain responsibility that comes with being the head of the family as social conditioning work, right? So they're in touch with all of that. And one of the things that they lose in touch with is their own intuition. So Yudhishthras are not really in touch with their own intuition because they're governed by what needs to be done, what's the precedence, what's the rule book, this is how it always was done, and all of that. They're absolutely not in touch with their own intuition, right? And what happens, Maina, is just to add to what you're saying, is that the way to deal with it is over a period of time, and it's a threshold question that Yudhishthras might ask. Right, and they will come to a point where they'll realize that they've neglected their intuition so much that they are actually not able to enliven the context, and that causes them to actually cross the threshold and ask them more deeper questions. So they tend to be in touch with a lot of the other archetypal energies, but it is a process. Once they actually cross the threshold is when you see actually movement happen. Right, and that's one of the things I need to leave with you. It's a very experiential, reflective kind of a process. It's not a cognitive process. It's not something that they sit down and say, this is what I need to do. But as you keep experiencing working with it, you start observing yourself, and then it actually comes out for them. I see this one on, you're on mute, Neelja.
Yeah, you are on mute.
Yeah, please go ahead, Vivek. I think you were also going to take that question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's a rebellious kind also, particularly identified. I mean, I see rebels everywhere, Aparna, across all these archetypal energies. But what tends to happen is, with the Bhima kind of archetypal energy especially, right? And one of the things with the Bhima is that, like I said, for a Bhima, everything is like a potential battle. Somebody who has a Bhima kind of energy, everything around is like a potential battle. So every time there's an opportunity where something gets provoked within you, and then you jump in and start looking at what needs to be done, look at everybody as antagonistic and get things cracking, right? So one of the things that Bhimas tend to struggle is that if they're not able to choose the right battle, right? And if they choose battles which may not necessarily actually be effective or what will be required, they may tend to be seen as rebels. So they're fighting a cause which is for themselves and not really fighting a cause which other people might actually value and something that you might like. So they tend to look at his bubble, yeah, as a rebel. And so a lot of people may say, okay, what's the point of even doing that, right? But it serves a certain purpose for the Bhima to say, okay, how am I keeping myself happy, enlightened, because I need to be constantly in a state of battle. So a lot of that rebel kind of a thing actually is a Bhima when he or she is not able to be in touch with choosing the right battle. Aparna, I don't know if I've answered your question or given you a perspective or a thought, food for thought.
Yeah, so last night I was sitting down with my daughter. I had a 3-hour long conversation with her because since morning she was picking battles with all of us, with me, with my husband. She's 18, usually sensible, but there are days when it goes that way. And by the time it was dinner time, I think she got ticked off because we told her, I think, enough of TV or something of that sort. And her behavior was like, I've never seen it like that, right? I know I might have seen it when she was much younger, the younger teenage, but I thought now she's kind of calming down, but I really saw that she had lost it. And the 3-hour conversation was just this, without really, talking about archetypal energies. I was just trying to say that you need to understand the perspective of, the other person, while one also needs to understand your own propensities and say, okay, fine, am I really behaving from, not behaving, but am I really? I'm not getting the right term, but acting. Yeah, maybe I'm acting from this propensity. I think it is also important for us to understand the propensity of the other person, right? Many times, maybe we don't have to kind of necessarily change our own propensity, but it needs that understanding of the reflection of why is the other person, behaving like that. And that was the, entire gyan that I was giving her, to say that, why do you think, we said no to your TV? Because, there is so much of screen time anyway from morning till night with your, online classes and all the other rubbish that you do, that, the TV is causing more strain on the eyes and all of that. So a little bit of that empathizing, if you can use that word, in terms of why the other person is behaving, can also kind of make us realize the archetypal energy that they are coming from, the propensity they are coming from. And then maybe, the dialogue will be better and the rebels could be quieted. I think whether it is you are rebelling or somebody else is rebelling. Just thought I would add that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Neerja. Thanks, Vivek. Participants, any more questions? We will open it up to questions now. You can also come on, unmute yourself and ask a question, or put it on the chat box.
I have a question.
Yes, Neeta. Yes, we can hear.
I would like to know from the ladies that why should we take it a guaranteed that all the house job is our job only? And why do we wait for the circumstances that we really get to do everything and then call them? Why can't we have such a scenario at home all the time that whatever is there, it is distributed? And like my husband is somewhat unique. He's always been like, I mean, first he will do and then I will get opportunity to do the thing. Though he had been in such hi-fi jobs and all, always. But it is, I mean, sometimes he will tell me that, don't worry, I'll cook, you go and play. Like that. But like right from beginning, we had this kind of, but that is not the thing that I leave everything on him when the time comes. I'll say that I am doing some part and he is doing some part, because he can take lot of, and he has lot of energy and he can take lot of strenuous things too. So during the lockdown, I was cooking and he was doing the jhadu pota, because because we have such a big house, 4-bedroom house and all. I couldn't even clean the one room and he managed to clean. I said, you just clean alternate day, don't clean the whole house every day. So we can just clean the kitchen and dining part every day. Rather than, so what I mean to say that we should not wait for such conditions, such situation. At least whatever has gone wrong with our husband, which we cannot change, is different. But we ladies should take it granted that we bring up our children in this way, that whether it's a boy or is a girl, everybody should be contributing in the household time to time. That's what I see. My son also, I mean, he is so much helpful that during the lockdown, even I could see their video that they are night time when the children slip off, they are cleaning the whole house for the tomorrow. They say we are keeping the ground ready for the tomorrows. So, you know, he works in Schlumberger. Schlumberger is such a company, they keep day and night a person busy online. But, you know, he would just, whenever he is off from his calls and all, he is helping her and doing the things. So I say Papa's genes, Papa's qualities have been inherited well by the children. So that should go on. So, you know, I don't say that everybody should be like that, but if we inculcate such atmosphere in the house, no, then automatically children will pick up, and that will be cool for any such time coming up in future or any time. And I think their life will also be comfortable and cool. That's what my suggestion is.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thanks, Nita.
Nita.
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, there are a few questions and we will take that, but I just thought I will respond to Nita to say that definitely, I mean, these are all the right things that, you know, now we believe, we understand. But what I was trying to say is the situation just happened overnight, right? And now that, you know, we all have gotten into a particular arrangement, I'm sure if, you know, God forsaken, we have anything, you know, worse off that happens in future. But if a situation happens due to a family crisis or an emergency, I think we will know how to deal with it. So the point is,
So this happened in a just at any odd point of time. But I mean, Corona is teaching us a lot of lessons.
surely,
Every aspect of the life. So we should take it and go it forward. That's what I'm. I know we have our Indian culture is different. Always man is sitting and woman is working. That kind of thing is there. But now the time has come, and it is our duty to change it. Like we ladies need to initiate it. That's what. Whenever I am talking in the entrepreneurship meetings with the young girls, I always tell them when they talk about that kids are doing this, I say girls are being harassed by this thing. I say this is not their mistake, this is our mistake. You bring up your girls in a way that why should they be harassed? They should be able to speak up. They should be able to fight.
Sorry to interrupt you here, Nita. We have a few, in the interest of time, we just have a few questions.
Sorry.
No problem.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nita. Thanks, Ayeshri. So let me
Yeah.
just take a look at the questions.
Yeah, we have
Padma Priya.
Padma Priya.
Yeah, please go ahead, Ayeshri. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll follow up
the
with
question from Padma Priya is, may you please give an example of archetypal energy type of Sahadev?
Yeah, so Priya, the Sahadeva archetypal energy comes from a space of actually knowledge. So, so this archetypal energy is all about you know, understanding what's happening in the background, understanding the processes that are involved. He or she understands the methodology, the knowledge of the particular context. Understands. So what Sahadevas tend to do is one of the unique ability of a Sahadeva is able to take a step back and look at what's happening. But the challenge is the shadow side of a Sahadeva is they oftentimes become spectators. So they oftentimes don't actually, the action element is missing in a Sahadeva. So what they're able to do is Sahadevas are able to take a step back, look at the context and see what's happening, what help do they need and things like that. But they're not able to actually step in and actually take action in that context. So it's an archetypal energy where, you know, the Sahadeva is all about tools, sharpening the tools, knows everything that is there. The Mahabharata also is a person who actually sharpens the tools. You know, and one of the things that we keep talking about, right? Everybody knows the three propensities, right? Everybody knows the three Pandava heroes. Arjuna, Bhima, Yudhishthira. Nakula, Sahadeva, for various reasons, have always been a little silent. Not many people talk about even them. It's because oftentimes that they chose the archetypal energies actually play roles which are always in the background. So Nakulas tend to enliven everything, but they often neglect themselves. Sahadevas keep the tools sharpened, they understand everything that's happening, equip everybody, but they're not the ones who come in the forefront. They're not the ones who actually take action. They're oftentimes at the back. And that's a typical Sahadeva kind of archetypal energy.
Thanks, Vivek. We have another question from Priya Parab. Vivek,
Yeah.
please elaborate on the shadow characteristics of other archetypes as well.
Yeah.
How do you achieve a balance of all the archetypes within us? And she has a follow-up question. How can we channelize the inner energies in creating better interpersonal relationships?
Sure. It's a long question. So so I touched upon some of the shadow sides, Priya, when I spoke about it, right? So typically one of the things of the Yudhishthira shadow type is, while they often carry the weight of holding, let's find a word for it. The whole thing of ensuring the continuity of a certain system often rests on the Yudhishthira shoulders. They tend to feel that, right? So you find so many examples where, this tradition has always been like this. They are the ones who hold traditions in organizations or in families. This is how it always has been done. This is how it will always continue, kind of a thing. So one of the things that the Yudhishtiras do very well is to continue the tradition. They will not deviate from tradition. They will not deviate from anything else. They will always ensure that there's continuity in the tradition. But one of the things of a Yudhishthira challenge, the shadow sides of a Yudhishthira, is because they are so stuck with it, they actually totally devoid of their own internal feelings and what's actually happening. Because they're stuck with saying that this is what needs to be done, because that's how it always has been done. But even deep inside, if I know this is not the way it needs to be done, some things need to change, they actually are not able to do it because the weight of holding the tradition is so strong. And therefore, that's one of the shadow sides. So they become very dysfunctional when they're not able to be in touch with their own intuition. They become like a slave master. They become very insecure and they keep pushing the entire thing down, saying, irrespective of whether it's relevant or not, it's always been done like this. Let's just do this. That's all that they like. That's the typical Yudhishthira shadow side. The Bhima shadow side, we spoke about picking the right battle. Bhimas tend to pick every battle. So, this whole thing of being if I have a hammer in my hand, everything looks like a nail, kind of a thing, right? So what Bhimas tend to struggle with is picking the battle which is relevant. And one of the things of the Bhima is they often become, toys in the hands of people who can control them. So Bhimas, if somebody can actually evoke the Bhima in a certain way, then Bhimas blindly just go and follow everything done. They don't think for themselves because they've got evoked with something, right? And that's the Bhima kind of a thing. Nakula is where they really, really struggle with being in touch with themselves. So they are not really able to be in touch with themselves. So they tend to neglect themselves a lot. And finally, it has to come out somewhere, right? And then it comes out in multiple ways. Right? The Sahadeva is what I just spoke about, the fact that they are able to look at the whole picture. They know exactly what needs to be done, but that action element is so missing in a Sahadeva. Right? And that's a shadow side in all of these. The question that you asked is, how do we create better personal relationships? One of the things that, like I offered, is the idea of the fifth propensity. How can you evoke the Arjuna within you, right? And it's a process. It's an internal process. So, is there a way in which you're able to take a step back, look at everything that's happening, look at the fact that your propensity? Have you looked at everything from a Yudhishthira propensity, or have you looked at everything from a Nakula propensity? Have you looked at it from a Bhima or a Sahadeva? Can you take a step back and then start observing the entire context and see how can you evoke the Arjuna within you? And when you're able to look at the Arjuna within you, you can see the relationship the way it needs to be seen. You can look at the relationship with a certain amount of objectivity, certain amount of passion, certain amount of trust. All of that actually comes in when you're able to evoke the Arjuna within you. Right, and that's what I offer. If you need to understand more about what the Arjuna within you, my invitation is for you to attend our programs.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. Priya, hope that has answered your question. And Vivek, the next question is from Aparna Singh. I see children picking up values which are easier to follow, not particularly the right ones. Can typical energies be changed or modified?
Nirja, you want to give it a shot? I don't think it's so much about archetypal energies, but I can build on it.
But just 1 minute, if I may interrupt, Vivek.
Please.
Before Nirja takes up this question, Aparna has a follow-up question to your other answer.
Sure, please.
So, being conformist, are Yudhishthira not innovative or path breakers? Is Aparna's question.
Let me understand this. So, being conformist or Yudhishthira not innovative or path breakers? Not necessarily. See, Yudhishthira tend to start off like that. right? So when they're in touch with the Yudhishthira propensity, they're not somebody who will break tradition. They are the ones who are basically purveyors. They will continue to hold tradition. But there are ways in which the threshold questions get crossed, right? And when you suddenly realize that, you know what, I'm realizing that I'm not in touch and there are other ways in which I can do it, when they start evoking the Arjuna, then they start looking at saying, how will this become different? One of the things is when you start becoming the Arjuna and the Arjuna takes over, you ask very deep questions of saying, why does it have to be done like this all the time? Can it be done differently? What are the ways in which it needs to be done? Once you start being in touch with that questioning side, a lot of what you said about innovation and creativity actually evolves. There's tremendous possibilities of innovation and creativity, but it's important that you touch that threshold within you. And then you bring the relevant people and you talk to people to actually look at what needs to be changed. And that's the power of bringing out the Arjuna within.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. Nirja, would you like to take the other question?
Yeah, I'm just reading that again.
Yeah, I see children, if you want me to read that. Yeah.
Sure,
I see children picking up values which are easier to follow, not particularly the right ones. Can typical energies be changed or modified? That's from Aparna.
Yeah. So, I mean, not even talking about the energies, but I think a direct answer to the question is, in my experience, children will pick up what they see and observe. And what they see and observe is a lot from home. And of course, then when they step out and they go to school and college, they will see a lot of that. And hence, you know, they will be picking up of those also. That happens. But I think, you know, if at home or you know, the main influencer, and usually it is at home, you know, with the parents or the guardians, if we are doing stuff in a particular manner, that will rub off at some point in time, or that, you know, you can get them to reflect back on that. And even if they've, you know, gone on a different path, you can try and get them to reflect on that, to say that this is how we are. Usually what happens is, you know, when they don't see the so-called role models, the influencers, you know, the seniors in the house towing the line in terms of what we are preaching. And hence, you know, those value systems, you know, get a little shaken. So if for example, when my daughter was much younger, all she used to see was, if I had to go anywhere, I would hail an Ola or an Uber, because I don't drive. For me, going anywhere was, you know, first Ola, Uber. So it is in her head that if you have to go out, that's the only way, right? She cannot think of a bus. She cannot think of walking to a shop. For her, you know, so I remember, and this reflection, it hit me as reality, was when one day we were just wanting to go to the next road, you know, in Alsur to buy something. And she probably didn't realize that it was this close. She knew we were going out to shop. She said, have you booked the Ola? That's when I realized that what she has seen is, you know, mama is always, you know, booking that and going. So a lot of that comes from what you do, and they observe quietly without understanding the larger context. And hence, you know, I think we have to be always on guard. You know, we have to realize, you know, what we do is probably interpreted in a particular manner by them in the context. And hence, and we cannot go and blame them that they are picking up the wrong things. I think the reflection is on us to see, what is it that I am doing? What is it that the rest of the family is doing? Sometimes there are contradictions in the family. The mother is doing and the father is doing something else, and there are two different kinds of thought process, right? And that could also, and the child will easily pick what suits the child when there is so much of contradiction between, you know, the family members. So it's all the more important for us to kind of, you know, present a uniform view, regardless of the battles that you have between, say, the husband and wife, but in front of the child, especially, you know, in the growing years and the influential years, you kind of present a uniformed view. And you know, that's how the child will, you know, pick up. So that's my question from a, you know, general parenting, you know, standpoint. Vivek.
Sure. No, and I think a lot of what Neeraja says is important, because see, archetypal energies don't get formed at such a young age for children. It's not something which is get fixed, right? What we are looking at is, what are the experiences, and therefore in their own way, how are they internalizing the experience that they face. So, you know, as they're growing up, and all of these experiences form unique patterns within them. So it only starts manifesting in certain ways when they reach a certain, you know, teenage and 18, 19, 20, when they reach a certain stages when a lot of the archetypal energies get formed, right? So in that sense, it's difficult to, get somebody to groom somebody with a certain particular archetypal energy, because all of them are great, all of them have shadow sides, and it's something that that is very unique to each individual. So there's nothing right or wrong about any archetypal energy. That's one of the things that we keep saying, is that every archetypal energy is extremely important. And today, for instance, one of the things that we want to, I'm adding a little bit to what you said, Nirja, but I think it's extremely important, is in this context when there is so much of flux and so much of, VUCA world as it's seen, a lot of people are actually struggling with a bunch of things. This Nakula energy is extremely important. Is Nakula energy to actually have dialogues with people, help them through it when people are losing their jobs, people are struggling. There's a certain, this whole thing of bringing the Nakula out and actually talking to people, helping them is very important. There's nothing wrong in being a Nakula, right? And so every energy is equally important. So it's difficult to groom a child to grow up with a certain particular kind of, archetypal energy. What we can do at best is to be good role models, be there for them when they are there, and it will evolve. And once they reach a certain stage, can they get the best of themselves is the question we need to ask. So can I be a best Nakula that I can be? Can I be the best Yudhishthira that I can be, where I'm in touch with my shadow side as well as my positive side? And can I have awakened the Arjuna within me? That's really the opportunity.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek and Nirja. With that, actually, we come to the end of the questions. Vivek, at this point, because I would like to let all the participants know that we are also, this was a webinar where we are opening up this session and we are planning a workshop together, right? So sure. Vivek, I would like you to speak a little on that so that we can see and the structure that the workshop, a little about the workshop, basically, so that the participants have an idea once we open registrations and all, they would be better prepared for that.
Sure. So what I basically spoke about today, and what Nirja and me have actually, the entire dialogue, is exactly what we cover in a program that we call Awaken the Shakti Within. Right. So fundamentally, the objective of the program is that there are 3 blocks to the program, right? And the first thing that we do in the program is help you be in touch with your own inner drama. Right. So the initial conversation that Nirja had, the initial talk that she was giving about how she was managing the entire household in this COVID context is what we touch. So initially, we work with you to understand what's happening within you. What are the questions which are popping up? What are the emotions which are coming up? We use this process called the Navarasas, right? Navarasas are the emotions. So we learn things about emotional mastery. So we work with you in understanding all those 9 emotions. What are those emotions? What are you experiencing? And what are you not able to express? So the first broad module is about just understanding the space of the inner drama, right? And so like I said, it's an experiential process. It's a process which is not about PowerPoint presentations. We give you cues. We use PowerPoints to the extent that it evokes something in you, right? And therefore, you're able to relate to all of this. So that's the first part of the entire, the workshop. The second part is where we do some assessment to help you understand which of the Pandava propensities that you belong to, which of the archetypal energies you belong to, right? And therefore, we work with you to look at the propensity, what's working for you, what's not working for you, create some examples so you understand the propensity much deeper. And towards the end of the second segment is where we bring you and introduce the Arjuna propensity and explain and work with some practice in terms of how can you bring out the Arjuna propensity within you. What are the exercises that you can do? What are the practices you can do? What are the ways in which you can be in touch with the Arjuna propensity within you? That's the second part. And the third part of the workshop is where, having understood your inner drama, having understood your heroic potential, we help you write your own heroic story. So we work with you to actually write a story where you're the hero of the story. So if you're the middle of the story, what are the conversations you need to have with the people around you? What are the steps you need to take for yourself, right? What are the things which are coming in the way of realizing your potential? What are the difficult conversations you may need to have with your children, your spouse, your boss, your employees, whoever it is, right? We work with you to build and write your own story, right? And that's fundamentally how this workshop is done, right? Typically, the workshop happens about 3 to 4 hours per week, spread over 6 weeks. But what I told Ayushri and Maina is that let's work out a model. which you all can think through in terms of what works for you from an administrative side. And we'll come back and discuss this in a later stage. But fundamentally, this is the way the program is. It's done by facilitators who have a deep understanding of these processes, and it's a very reflective process. So
Yes.
that's what it is.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Yes, certainly. So like we said, Vivek, we have 2-day focused workshops. That's the model we are doing now. And we can see in the chat that we have participants who would be interested. And so we'll certainly plan this out better and share communications shortly so that, and these workshops will be closed groups. So we would request the participants to register soon and obviously be a part of these workshops. So thank you, Vivek and Nirja, for this amazing session. I'm sure the participants have taken a lot they have to reflect on. And we would like to let everyone know that the recording would be available. The recording would be shared with you shortly and would also be available on the CWE YouTube channel. So please do subscribe to the channel. The details would be there on the chat box. So please do share and follow us on our social media pages also to stay updated with all the upcoming events and webinars that are happening. Since we have done this webinar and plan workshops for the future, we will also be sending a feedback form to you guys. So please request you to fill that form up because we feel that would help us to curate the session better with Vivek and Nirja. And the workshops better according to your what you would prefer for this workshop. So we look forward to hearing from you through the feedback forms. To become a CWE member, you can please get in touch with us on membership@cwe.org.in. The details of which you'll find it on the chat box again. And thank you so much. Have a great weekend, everyone. I would just request everyone to come on video so that we can take a quick picture here, and sharing here from us from Q Energy would take a photo from for all of us. Yeah, if one can just turn on their videos, we all will just take a quick picture. Yeah, Sherin, are we good to go? Yes.
Sherin, you're on mute.
Neeta Doshi, Sirisha, Lakshmi, Rupa, if you could come on video, that would be great.
Just come on video for a second. We'll just quickly take a picture and.
Okay. Everybody say Quinnergy.
CWE.
CWE. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek and Nirja. This was an amazing session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
Bye.